It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Thank you so much for joining us today. Almost didn't make it into the studio here for this segment because I was so busy going over news and big developments that are unfolding. We're going to be here, obviously, for the next 3 hours today, and we have several big guests joining us. Lew Rockwell, the former chief of staff of Ron Paul, will be joining us to talk about the ongoing firestorm over Rand Paul endorsing Mitt Romney, happily, in his words, and the response by some of the Ron Paul establishment politicos. Tom Woods, who is good friends with Ron Paul, speaks at many of his rallies, put a video out yesterday saying there needs to be a top-down analysis of Campaign for Liberty and pointed out the head of Campaign for Liberty, and I didn't even know this, I went and looked it up, it was true, actually doesn't think we should be involved in foreign policy, constitutionalist, and we should just get Ron Paul and all of it out of the business of criticizing these wars. And he said there should be a top-down, we're going to play that video here in a moment, a top-down look at it and that the head of it should be removed. Now, we called him up this morning and he said, look, I think I've said enough. I'm going to just wait and see. I trust Ron Paul is not going to endorse Mitt Romney. If he does, it's going to pretty much destroy him, folks. And everybody is sitting here in horror because there are some rumors fluttering around at high levels that it's being considered. And as Ron Paul supporters, as admirers and supporters, it's our right, it's Tom Woods' right to come out and say, hey, we're concerned. And people are going, yeah, I keep getting weird neocon mail from Campaign for Liberty and from Rand Paul and Ron Paul's groups promoting people, and you go look them up, and they're Council on Foreign Relations, they're pro-war. That's why the dam broke. Look, Rand doing that really just made a bunch of concerns break. Now, we've got other huge world news going on, and I'm going to cover that first here today because in the second and third hour, we've got Governor Gary Johnson coming on. That'll be open phones. Lew Rockwell's coming on, specifically calls for him, so I'll open the phones up with Lew Rockwell and Governor Gary Johnson, specifically for questions for both those men. We're not just going to be talking about Ron Paul all day and Rand Paul. But this is a big deal because the Liberty Movement is beginning to win, getting 70+% of the military's donations. I mean, that shows that the idea of fighting the globalists, restoring the republic, cutting taxes, defending the family, Second Amendment, states' rights, nullification, getting us out of the UN, auditing and abolishing the Federal Reserve. We understand Ron Paul's in a dangerous position pushing all that. So he went from let's get rid of the Fed to, well, let's audit it and then maybe get rid of it. I understand all that, and I understand Ron Paul not coming out and saying 9/11's an inside job, even though he talks about false flags, staged terror, and says he questions the official story because government always lies. He also goes along with the narrative and says, okay, if we're not attacking them, they wouldn't attack us. So I compromise a little bit over the years, knowing that Ron Paul couldn't be Alex Jones, even though you read his writings from the 80s and early 90s, he was. I mean, this guy is iconic in his understanding of the New World Order. He's the proto Alex Jones. He's the proto info warrior. But if he's trying to cement some dynasty with all the power we've brought to the table as patriots, it's not going to happen. I had Chuck Baldwin on last night, the Nightly News, who Ron Paul endorsed when he couldn't win in the 08 election instead of McCain, and he was saying this is devastating what's happened. And he believes Ron Paul will not endorse Mitt Romney, but basically said it will be like a nuclear bomb going off in the Liberty Movement if he does. Tom Woods has said the same thing. Tons of news coming up. Stay with us. I was thinking last night and this morning just how crazy it is that everything that we've talked about year after year that was coming under this global corporate fascist world government is now beginning to actually unfold. I mean, we have been so dead on, so accurate, because the globalists think the public isn't paying attention, and most of the population of the planet isn't. But we're reading their CFR, their Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg leaks, their public statements, where they openly talk about how they're sterilizing us through the food and water, how they're establishing world government, how they're going to get rid of the family, how they're going to put nanotech into us that basically rewires our brains, viruses that they call new vaccines coming out that make you not be angry again and to want to submit to them. That sounds like Martians from space in some 50s movie that come and spray stuff on the town and make everybody subservient zombies. It's all being looked at. It's all being done. Yesterday, we saw KXAN TV report on a Army Department of Defense UT test outside Austin, out in the hill country, that blew up a laboratory and fired railgun shrapnel, high-speed projectile into someone's car, basically blowing the car up and injuring them. And I sent reporters out yesterday to look into it. I'm just going to leave it at that. We've got to put the report together, but this is the kind of thing I'm worried about SWAT teams busting in here any minute. And by the way, the FBI's been here repeatedly, the Secret Service. I mean, they've tried to shut us down before. My wife said the phones have got to be tapped. They were flipping on and off this morning and clicking, and you pick the phone up and somebody be talking. So I've gotten calls before, and they've said, we're listening to you. You know, you just said this. My wife has gotten calls repeatedly where they tell her what she was just talking about with her parents or with me on the phone to freak her out. But the phones were clicking and going wild. I'll just go ahead and tell you this, okay? They were out till 10 o'clock at night working on this. This led to a chain reaction of the discovery of a nuclear waste dump off Redbud Trail in the middle of Austin. They've still got the shut down old reactor under the LBJ library. We tried to go look at that and got threatened with arrest. And all of this ties in. They've got a bioweapons farm out by Bastrop with a bunch of monkeys and apes in it, testing stuff that'll literally wipe off 90% of the world population, or 6 billion people plus, in a matter of months if it was released. And I've got sources on that. Just where I live is like a fantasy land of super science weapons from a science fiction movie. I mean, I'm wondering where Thundar the Barbarian is going to come running by any minute. And then I'm about to get in, for the most of the show, about Ron Paul and Rand Paul, who are great guys. People have been hurt by watching the direction of Rand Paul and Campaign for Liberty change. Ron Paul is involved in this. But at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter. I mean, we'll be lucky if the globalists don't release some super weapon in the next 5 years and kill almost all of us, as they've talked about doing. You know, they discuss how they're going to set up a world government, get a control grid in, release giant bioweapon plagues to reduce our numbers. And you know, we've got the quotes in films like Endgame. Whatistheendgame.com as the online bibliography. I read you constant, government documents and reports here on air. I mean, it's just, we're living in a science fiction land, and the general public is just totally obsessed with lotteries and sports and fashion. And I'm not knocking anybody that's into that kind of stuff. It's all interesting. Sports is interesting. Fashion's interesting. Guns are interesting. Women are very interesting. I mean, I get it. I understand saying, oh, the world's crazy, I'm just going to enjoy myself. But there's something bigger than that. Our ancestors always were in a struggle against the tyrants and control freaks and megalomaniacs to carve out all the good things we've got today. And life is so short, I'm not worried about my physical death. I'm not worried about my physical death. I am worried about the death of our species and letting a bunch of crazy people that want to vandalize our genetic code and are doing it through the chemical and biological attacks and radiological attacks they've got us under that they brag about. I don't want to just give the future over to these people. My son is here with me today. I took him to work with me because it's summertime. My wife's taking my daughters with friends to a water park, but he wanted to come here with us. And I promised him I'd take off work early today and let Aaron, or I think Darren McBreen's doing the nightly news tonight, and I'd take him out and do some stuff today. But, you know, once I go ahead and release the information, my gut tells me I need to, about the nuclear waste dump hidden in the middle of Austin, and the nuclear reactors and all the rest of it. And remember, they just declassified a few years ago that in Southern California, they had that sodium salt reactor meltdown bigger than Chernobyl in, 59, and that was kept secret until just a few years ago. In fact, guys, that's NBC News. Will you guys print me just California reactor meltdown kept secret, and that should bring it up. I've shown it on air before and played part of the newscast, but I mean, the point is that you discover this, and then, you know, UT runs the Sandia Labs out in New Mexico, and it's just, we start going out. I'm like, let's go do a piece on the nuclear reactor under UT that's still running its half-life, and then the two big ones, well, the little one and the big one, they've got up at the J.J. Pickle Center that no one seems to know about or care about, with all the, you know, barbed wire machine gun nest over there, where they do tests. The most dangerous type of reactors are doing constant tests and manipulations of them. And then you find out that 9 out of 10, and Aaron's got these numbers, the government admits reactors are leaking in the United States. 9 out of 10, it's the same number worldwide. And all of that's happening. And then we start doing research and discover someone right here in our own crew's grandfather was the head superintendent of all the buildings and maintenance for the University of Texas, and knows all about it. I can confirm what he's saying, because my dad was in the physics department and worked on the reactor. And then I'd already been told about how, you know, your AM radio won't work out on Redbud Trail. There's so much. There it is, California's historical nuclear meltdown. And then it just goes over that whole report. Great, print that for me, but also print the NBC, California reactor meltdown in 59. Yeah, but I want the NBC. Thank you. Anyways, side issue. We sent the guys out to the limestone caves right in the middle of the wealthiest area of Austin, where, according to our source's grandfather and other documents and information we ferreted out, that they used it as a dump. I mean, it just never ends. We start looking into some type of particle accelerator railgun explosion, Department of Defense. UT's running bioweapons labs right outside Austin in level 2 facilities that are level 4. You've seen the level 2 facility with level 4 at the UT University of Texas facility down in Galveston that got hit by the hurricane and destroyed, or pretty much destroyed. I mean, it's just, again, we're living in crazy land. And the railgun fires and blows up a part of a building and shoots a car driving down a country road. And they're like, never mind, there's some type of leak there. That's in the news. But the Army and UT are working on it. I mean, who knows? It's a nanotech facility. I forgot that part. Yeah, there it is. Ruling expected on L.A. nuclear cleanup. By the way, folks, you got to pray for us. Reporting that our sources, who are credible, are saying there is a nuclear waste dump in the middle of Austin. This has never been reported on. Just like this situation outside San Diego has never been reported on, is muy dangerous. But I know they know, because our phones are tapped, that we're looking at this. So it doesn't matter. I've got to go ahead and say it here on air, even though the report's not ready. But this will be national news. So, I mean, I'm supposed to talk about, because that's what everybody's upset about. I'm upset about it. Ron Paul. Hey, you know what? Ron Paul's a good guy. Rand Paul's a good guy. They've got a bunch of mainline Republican analysts working for him now, and I think they're making big mistakes. But I don't want to hear the denial that Ron Paul's not involved in this. And it's our job as his diehard supporters and contributors to not let them compromise, instead of saying, gee, is it okay to criticize anything they're doing? Over 80% in the poll we've got at Infowars.com was 80% last night. Let me check it now. Think that it is a bad idea for Rand Paul to join with Mitt Romney. Do you approve of Rand Paul's decision to work within the establishment and support Mitt Romney? We've got 5,697 votes. This poll before it had bugs, and we took it down. Used to get like 50,000 votes. Not this particular poll, but I mean the old poll system we had. This new one people don't use as much. People should go vote there. It's at the bottom right-hand corner of Infowars.com. Do you approve of Rand Paul's decision to work within the establishment and support Mitt Romney? 80%, that's what it was last night, 4,574 votes against. 20% say yes. And that's out of just pure loyalty to Ron Paul. And I mean, I get it. I understand, work within the Republicans, try to change them. But that's not what I'm seeing happening. I'm getting mail endorsing mainline neocon Republicans from Campaign for Liberty, and so is everybody else. Ron Paul wasn't even sure if he was going to speak at this big festival, the counter national convention, because it might make the Republicans mad. But now the Republicans say they're okay with it because of what Rand's done. I mean, I've not found compromise is the way to go. I'm going to play Tom Woods. This is a video Tom put up, but then pulled down. And he said, well, you know what? He doesn't want to put salt in the wound. He wants to wait and see. He thinks Ron Paul will do the right thing and come out and say that he's not going to endorse Romney. We invited him on the show. He's been on before years ago. He said he'd come on later, but he's not going to come on today. Well, you know what, Tom? You put the video out there. We've got it. We're going to air it here coming up because what you said was very eloquent and took courage. We'll be right back. Tonight on InfoWars Nightly News, we're going to show you footage of the sealed caves over off Redwood Trail at the old dam where in the 60s and 70s and right into the 80s, the University of Texas dumped radiological waste from the nuclear reactor. According to the former head of operations at the University of Texas, head of the campus facilities. And I know about the reactor. I know about all the secrecy. They even tell students at UT there's not a reactor still going through its half-life phase underneath the LBJ library and museum. Yeah, the Presidential Library Museum. First one in the country, by the way, was for LBJ. They built it on top of a nuclear reactor and took the, there's also underground tunnels under there. I've confirmed that separately that are connected out to Bergstrom, where they was the former SAC base. The Hilton Hotel out there, a circular hotel, is the former SAC command base for much of the United States. There's a whole bunch of secret stuff around here. I live here, and you need to understand, folks, this is happening all over the world, not just here in the U.S. There are giant black projects, secret programs happening. Some of the other news coming up, and then I'll get to the Tom Woods video ahead of our guest joining us. I remember Kurt Nimmo writing this article yesterday from European, Russian, and Middle Eastern sources. Russia denies sending helicopters to Syria, says West arming rebels. But there are news articles out today, out of the Financial Times and others, saying that Russia defends arms sales to Syria. But it turned out they just make that up. Here's the New York Times reporting today. And again, Kurt's for InfoWars yesterday said it wasn't true. People got mad at him in the comments and said he was a Ruski agent or something. Last time I checked, folks, it isn't the Ruskis that are got drones in the sky and putting sodium fluoride and radioactive isotopes in my water. Last time I checked it wasn't the Ruskis that run the Federal Reserve. If the Ruskis do anything to America, they can go straight to a place where the sun don't shine, okay? I'm sick of the globalists going, oh, Al-Qaeda's going to get you. If you don't give your rights up, be patriot. Oh, the Russians will get you. The Chinese will get you. You mean the same Chinese government, our criminal government, paid $20+ million to ship General Motors to? Shut up with your lies. I am so sick of these neocon groups putting out articles. I see them almost every day saying I'm a Ruski agent or something. I am a tooth fairy before I'm that. But again, it just shows their disinformation. Sorry, I'm ranting. Here it is. Copters in Syria may not be new, U.S. officials say. Oh, turns out they got sold a long time ago. Hillary on Tuesday accused of shipping attack helicopters to Syria that would escalate the conflict. But they go on to say she put a little bit of a spin on it, said one senior Defense Department official, because they'd been delivered a long time ago. Also, CNN floats idea of U.S. assassinating Syrian President Assad. What's Hillary say? They came, they saw, Gaddafi died, and they put al-Qaeda in? And again, I'm supposed to, oh, you must like al-Qaeda that you don't want all these wars going on. Wars? They say, look, al-Qaeda is in this country, invade, and then the West uses al-Qaeda to actually invade the country. I know I rant a lot about that. It just makes my head spin. By the way, I'm probably seeing, no exaggeration, 20 or more articles every day saying Obama is done. Washington Post, Der Spiegel, Associated Press, his poll numbers plunging, MSNBC saying he's a dead political duck. I guess our sources, and people like Jerome Corsi are right, the Bilderbergs have decided they can't get anywhere with Obama, and they are looking at getting rid of him. And before you say hip, hip, hooray, and believe me, I'll be glad to quit seeing him on TV all the time. I hate Obama, but I hate his globalist masters a lot more. Here comes Mitt Romney. We're all supposed to get all excited like Obama idiots 4 years ago when he was president-elect or getting ready to be. And, oh, my gosh, woo, boy, Bush is out of there. McCain, you lost. Woo, we're going to get free houses and free cars, and the economy's going to be back. And yippee-ki-yay, we got rid of Bush. I'm like, bought and paid for by the same people, nothing but puppets. That's not even a sophisticated point. That's a no-brainer, 1 + 1 = 2. And now I've got to sit here and watch. I mean, I saw a CNN clip this morning. We'll play it later if we have time. With Rand Paul, God bless his little heart. You know, with his little Ronald McDonald hair and everything. I'm sorry. He's up there. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. He's sitting there. I mean that affectionately. He's sitting there. And it's like a mini-me of Ron Paul. It's like, here's the big Ron Paul, and then there's like Dr. Good has like a little Dr. Evil on his knee. And the host of CNN's going, well, wait a minute, your dad didn't agree with him on this and that. And he's like, oh, no, Romney wants to get rid of the Federal Reserve. Oh, no, he is. I mean, it was just like watching this defense of Romney. This isn't just an endorsement. This is an absolute worship fest of Mitt Romney. Okay, he'll save us. Okay, this Austin nuclear reactor story is so important, and it fits in with UT having big labs out in the University of Texas in New Mexico, has a bunch of big labs. It ties into the salt reactor in '59 outside San Diego that blew up bigger than Chernobyl and wasn't even admitted to till decades later. In fact, you look it up, there's hardly even any news about it. In fact, looking it up, we found another reactor site outside L.A. where they were dumping the stuff. Ruling expected on L.A. nuclear cleanup. The case involves a Cold War-era accident at the Santa Susana Field Laboratory. And this is NBC News. This just came out last year. But the point is, here's another report. California's historical nuclear meltdown. Japan's nuclear power crisis has planted indelible memories worldwide on the revived doubts about the health and safety of nuclear power. It may unsettle many to discover that California, too, and they kept it secret, experienced a partial nuclear meltdown. The accident, which occurred in '59, is claimed to have released more radiation than 3 Mile Island. Yeah, I think it's 70 times, they say. The severity of health impacts from the incident on site workers and to the surrounding community is still being debated. Oh, yes. Now, of course, we now learn a year ago radioactive tuna, just 3 months after Chernobyl was being caught, and the government knew and covered it up off L.A. and off San Diego. Folks, we told you at the time, they had state labs in Connecticut, as far east as Connecticut and Vermont, high levels. You know, dozens and dozens, it was like 25, 30-something, depending on the lab, in the milk of cows because they're bioaccumulating. They're eating grass where this stuff's coming down. See, the trade winds, the jet stream, all of it comes from over Japan and dumps in at different areas over the United States. And you've got the currents going up to Alaska. The hair is falling out of the seals and the people that live there, that the fishermen and the flight attendants that are flying through it. This is in the news. I mean, this is happening. And then we go out to look at the reactor, and one of our crew members, who hadn't been on air yet, he's going to be with us after the break here in a moment. He's like, oh, yeah, my grandfather was the head guy for UT over all the buildings and their maintenance. And we looked that up. Sure enough, there he is. And yeah, he said that they would take rods, chemicals, the fluid out of the reactor, the old one that's under the LBJ library, the presidential library in Austin. And everything he was saying, I'd gotten pieces of from other sources. Aaron tried to do a documentary when he was at UT in film school. He also got a degree from their School of Public Affairs there, Aaron Dykes. And they tried to just ask questions and got threatened with arrest about it. Wanted to try to get down in there with their cameras. The security guards admitted there was a bunch of stuff. Just like they store the nuclear waste on site, reportedly it's still under UT. Well, now we're learning from the 60s and 70s, and he'd never been there. His grandpa told him where it was, how they sealed the limestone caves, and he went over there. They went over there yesterday, and sure enough, it's there. Let me just tell you this, AM radio ain't coming in over the site. We've got to get some good radiation detectors and get over there before they try to kick everybody out of the area. And again, if you got radiation, AM radio gets cut out. We're going to find out what's going on. It was a uranium reactor. And again, this is about 98% confirmed. We know about the two research reactors they've got that are more modern at the J.J. Pickle Center up in North Austin off Research. That area, giant area with big fences around it. I mean, there's there's like 500, 600 yards just between the fences and the facility and the reactors, and they're very quiet about that. The average Austinite doesn't even know they're there. I'm already getting into it. He's going to join us. I'm going to recap this, and I'm getting out just a preliminary him on record before we get the video out tonight, because the guys were out till like 9, 10 o'clock last night. They just got in, and I've gone ahead and talked about it because I know they're listening to our phones. A lot of stuff going on today, and so I'm just going to get this on record in case they SWAT team us and say we've got heroin and cocaine in here. Because believe me, ladies, or dead children or something, or prostitutes, I mean, or Easter bunnies. Because believe me, if this is correct, and this is the report, and we know there's reactors, we know that they always did this in the old days, just dumped it on the edge of town. Where they dumped it's the middle of Austin now, but in the 70s was on the edge of town. This is exactly how they do it. At old dams and old facilities and old research caves, you know, where they stored things. And this needs to be looked into right now. So it fits in with what I've been told. Aaron Dykes, again, tried to make a film there. This is 97, 98% confirmed. I hope it's false, the severity of it. But just 2 days ago, we had a Department of Defense cyclotron explosion. It's some type of railgun experiment that blew a laboratory up. I mean, I'm living in the middle of Buck Rogers land. They've got bioweapons out at the monkey farm. I've got multiple sources on that. They admit it's level 4. It's level 4. Look up level 4 bioweapons research at University of Texas, Galveston. That's admitted out on the water. And they're building, well, they've already built, since Bush, 36 more of these around the country. Now they're planning or completing 200 plus more. You know, we've done shows on this, but it just clicked. Oh, hey, go do stories on the nuclear reactor, and the word is there's waste under the LBJ thing. Oh, Aaron's like, oh, yeah, I tried to do a film on that. Threatened to arrest our guys. Oh, really? Yeah, my dad was in the, the physics department as a student. He said there was all sorts of stuff down in there on the top of the reactor. We'll go out to J.J. Pickle. All right, we'll go out tomorrow to where the railgun blew up. We got to get out to that monkey farm. Yeah, but that's a couple of miles past Barbar to get to that. It's like Area 51. All right, well, by the way, my grandpa was the head of maintenance, and he said they dumped it all in the caves. I mean, it's just like, yeah, there it is. Southern Research, Galveston National Laboratory to develop screening platform in biosafety level 4 laboratory. And they call it developing safety to have a level 2 and level 4. Level 4 is weaponized Ebola, weaponized pox. I mean, we're talking killed 90+% deader than a hammer. So they just put that on screen. Okay, enough. It's just that I realize I've got all these hours talking about where the country's going, the election, Lew Rockwell coming up, Governor Gary Johnson, Libertarian presidential candidate. And then I realized that none of that even really matters in the final equation, because no one's talking about all the level 4 bioweapons labs. No one's talking about all over the country, right through to today in Indiana and Michigan and Illinois and Texas and California. Now you see it every few weeks. Oh, yeah, nuclear alarms went off. They're not going to turn them on anymore, when it gets released. Yeah, they did release, in this town in Canada or this town in California, a bunch of radiation, but they say it's no big deal. Yeah, radiation detectors went off, but it's fine. We've raised the levels to say it's safe. See, and see, these reports fit into everything we've seen in other areas of the country. where they just go and store it in a cave or in an underground warehouse right outside town. And the fact that his grandfather, when we went out and looked yesterday, and I know how these limestone caves work, it's like at my house, I live by a dry creek bed, but when it rains for a week straight, all of a sudden water starts gushing out of the rocks, and there's a big, luscious, 5-foot deep creek behind my house. Only like that a few months out of the year. I live out in the country, and it's a creek feeding into a bigger creek. But even the big creek, you know, is only running about half the time, and it just comes out. And his grandfather was telling him how water would just pour out over all this into the Colorado River. I mean, this is amazing. This is amazing. And we're again breaking this here. We hope that we're incorrect, but I don't think his grandfather is. We went out there. It's exactly what they said was out there. Pretty amazing. Okay, let's go to this. Tom Woods is a researcher, an author, a friend, confidant of Ron Paul, speaks at most of his big events, and he's a man of conscience like Ron Paul, who is a constitutionalist, who loves liberty, who understands the New World Order, who understands dependency. I agree with his constitutional ideas that transcend even libertarianism and the globalists trying to co-opt that. And Woods, eloquently in 3.5 minutes, said some really powerful things. And then they noticed that the video was taken down, but people had already copied it. And I saw a comment on the Daily Poll by Woods saying, well, I don't want to, you know, rub salt in the wound. I want to trust in Paul that he's not going to endorse, even though we're hearing rumors of that, and that I'm getting more information. Well, then we talked to him this morning. He's like, I'm going to wait and see. I think my video may do more harm than good. No. Tom, your video will do nothing but good when you point out the head of Campaign for Liberty thinks that we shouldn't be against these wars and shouldn't be involved in foreign policy. American citizens have that right and duty. Ron Paul is dead on. That's the heart of what you're saying. There should be a top-down review of all these big, famous neocon operatives who say on the Campaign for Liberty site, I'm a seasoned operative. They call themselves that. We don't want that. We want statesmen. We don't want compromise. We want principles. We don't want business as usual. That's why Ron Paul was loved. And if Rand wants to make the mistake, and look, Rand Paul is out today saying you got to have a warrant for drones. He wants a federal law. Those laws are already in place. Just enforce them. Good job. He's saying don't arrest Amish for selling milk. Let people buy raw milk. He's out fighting the Federal Reserve. He's doing a great job. It's that we love you guys, that we don't want to see you co-opted. And we're coming in trying to drag you away from the hyenas. And some people don't understand that, a small minority, maybe 15%. And then they basically growl back at us saying, you know, let us have Rand Paul and Ron Paul. You stay out of this. Folks that built this coalition, the people that gave the money and gave the shoe leather on the street to get the word out and calling into talk radio and doing countless shows and rallies. Ron Paul belongs to us. Rand Paul belongs to us, and we're not going to let the New World Order take them. We can understand that he thinks he can work with Romney and that he was led to do this, and I can see the politics. But we want to see you radically turn back, Rand, towards being a purist when it comes to liberty and freedom. Because you will destroy yourself if you don't, and you guys, we need you as statesmen and icons, your father especially. Look at your father. Respect him. Do what he's done. Don't defend Mitt Romney and you know, when people bring up the fact that he's diametrically opposed to your father and twist it, like I heard you do on CNN, that, oh, no, he's against the wars. Oh, no, he wants to do something to the Fed. Oh, no, he doesn't. And Rand, when Mitt Romney gets in, that's what it looks like now. That he's not a ringer, the establishment wants him. That's the momentum, unless Obama stages a new war or blows something up. What are you going to do when he's for predator drones in America and checkpoints and police state and new wars? You're going to have your wagon hitched like Chuck Baldwin, who got your father's endorsement for president when your father got cheated out of the nomination 4 years ago. He endorsed Chuck Baldwin Constitution Party. And Chuck has said exactly what I've said. It's called Chuck Baldwin, A Warning to Ron Paul. It's at Infowars.com right now. The video, a partial transcript. Listen to Chuck Baldwin. Listen to Tom Woods. Listen to these people. Okay, you can turn this around. You're going to lose, I'd say, 80 to 90% of your support. And then when people see you go along with Mitt Romney later down the road, it's over. Please don't do this. Liberty will continue on. And you guys as a focal point and a rallying point, we have really won some big battles here. Okay, Here's Tom Woods, very eloquent. Then we'll go to break, come back with a quick report from the InfoWars crew member about the report we shot yesterday. Aaron Dykes, myself, and others will have a report done by tonight that's got video, details. There needs to be a major investigation of the cave system out by the dam off Redbud Trail off the Colorado River known as Ladybird Lake. It's all doublespeak. It's a river, folks, but they call it a lake. Only in the New World Order. This needs to be looked into. This is very dangerous news we're breaking. Here's Tom Woods.
Congressman Paul, this message is for you, but I thought the sentiments in it were important enough that they should be heard by anybody who cares to listen. One of my favorite parts of Brian Doherty's new book, Ron Paul's Revolution, takes place on page 3, where Doherty's been talking about the Giuliani moment of 2007, where you spoke some forbidden truths about the U.S. government's foreign policy, truths the whole world knows, but which are not allowed to be expressed in the United States, and Giuliani attacked you. The whole world expected you to back down, but as a matter of fact, you actually amplified your points. And on page 3 of this book, Doherty quotes just a regular American who said, "I was watching that debate, and I was fully expecting Ron Paul, without a friend in the world, to back down." And then he amplified his points. And I felt like at that moment, this guy says, the world changed forever. Because in our society, whenever anybody strays from the 3x5 card of approved opinion, well, it's always followed by apologies and retractions and clarifications. There's a liturgical ritual of expiation that one undergoes, and you refuse to do that. And it did change the world forever. One of my favorite memories from the campaign this time around is actually a photograph of a college student actually hugging you. You had changed his life. When was the last time somebody hugged Mitt Romney and said, "Mitt, your philosophy changed my life"? And this is all because of who you are. You've been that man who refuses to go along, who will not be absorbed into the establishment, who's going to tell us those forbidden truths. And that's why you've given people such genuine hope. People feel like, here's that one honest man who can't be bought, and his arm can't be twisted. And let's contrast that with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, for one thing, thinks that budget cuts cause depressions. Or even worse, I'll just give you 5 words about Mitt Romney. Secretary of State John Bolton. Now, I understand that you're under tremendous pressure to endorse Mitt Romney. And the people who are urging you to do this, and I am certain I know who they are, and I've warned you about them, do not have your best interests at heart. The millions of kids you've inspired would be totally devastated. Your legacy would be destroyed. And people would literally be in tears over this. Now, 99 times out of 100, I would assume there's no way Ron Paul is going to endorse Mitt Romney, who disagrees with him on every major thing. But I can understand the appeal someone might make to a father, saying, you love your son, you want to help your son, don't you? And people, I'm sure, are telling you that you would help your son by endorsing Romney. But Rand is going to sink or swim on his own merits. That has nothing to do with whether or not you endorse Mitt Romney. And incidentally, may I say parenthetically that all this needs to be accompanied by a top-to-bottom reform of the organization Campaign for Liberty. For example, the gentleman running it right now believes the organization should steer entirely clear of foreign policy. Now, like it or not, the head of Campaign for Liberty is implicitly the custodian of the Ron Paul legacy, and this is not an appropriate person to be in charge of an office like that. Finally, Dr. Paul, I truly believe you are a great man. And one of the great privileges of my life has been to be involved in this movement that you've led, to have spoken at so many of your events, including the Rally for the Republic, to have worked with you on projects, and to have had my own work endorsed by you. Dr. Paul, you changed the world in 2007. Don't change it back. Just be Ron Paul, and millions of us will support you. We love you, Ron.
And we love the focal point it created to expose the globalist and false flag terror and CIA drug dealing. I mean, Ron Paul is the real deal. He could have sold out of the system a long time ago. And there's Tom Woods voicing very concisely what I've been trying to say in hours of babble. And it's a lot of other stuff. I mean, some of his family's been upset. A lot of people inside the campaign have been upset. Rand and Ron's crew This is real, folks. We're battling in a tug of war to keep the polls pure. That's what's happening with a bunch of political operatives. We'll be right back. Okay, we've got some big breaking news here. It'll be codified and detailed tonight on the Nightly News, and then more on Friday. This is all moving very quickly. The University of Texas has been involved with Los Alamos and other national laboratories, Sandia National Laboratories out in New Mexico as well. There is a reactor that down under the LBJ Presidential Library, they built on it. I know because my father was in there as a UT student, as a physics student. And you can dig around and find, mentions at UT that it did exist, that it's there. It has a half-life, so it's still basically going down there. And that a lot of waste got stored under there. That's what they do at most of these facilities. But then we went out doing a report on this in more detail, and Chris Oden, his great-grandfather was Benjamin Ellis, and he was the superintendent of facilities for 20 years of all the big UT headquarters campuses here in Austin, Texas. And he had always told him over off Red Bud Trail by the dam that there was a area where it was rods encased in concrete, fluids, barrels, and that they put it in there and walled off these caves. In your own words, tell us about this. Chris Oden, who happens to work for us, we're all doing a report on this. He's like, well, hey, my great-grandfather actually, has even more on this. And this is standard for these facilities built in the 60s and 70s, is they would just go stick it somewhere on state property or on city property. And so if this is indeed true, and I'm sure his grandfather's being accurate, we need to look into this. We need to know about this. Tell us the basics of this, Chris.
Well, basically, to my knowledge, what my grandfather disclosed to me is that for a number of years they had attempted to get rid of waste in East Austin, and that area was growing very fast. And they'd found a area in the large caves in South Austin where waste was disposed of. It wasn't necessarily my grandfather's idea, but his job was to oversee transportation,
Sure. I mean, we're not throwing him under the bus. He just knew about it.
Absolutely. And a number of other people did. I remember my grandfather, his son-in-law, telling me the same stories, and he used to explore the caves when he was a kid. And
get closer to that mic for me. It's a little bit low. He
explored the caves when he was a kid, and they had closed them off sometime in the late 60s, early 70s, systematically. I've explored caves in the side of cliffs like Airman's Cave here in Austin. Those that are thin enough to get into it can go for hundreds of yards, if not miles, into the cave network.
There's giant honeycomb. There's underground cenotes. Some of the biggest caves in the U.S. are actually underground. Absolutely. Some of the biggest populations of Mexican brown bats.
Right, and parts of the caves are below the water table. Parts of the caves are above the water table. To my knowledge, that's where a lot of the waste was stored, is above the water table. The area in particular off of Redbud Trail close to Tom Miller Dam was an entrance just like that was above the water table, above where the lake level was, that could be explored for miles.
Now, you told me yesterday that your great-grandfather was concerned or talked about the fact that water sometimes did come in there.
Absolutely. The entrance there was in a ravine that did at one time flow directly into the Colorado River. Since then, concrete bulkheads, massive amounts of dirt work have been done there to cover up those entrances.
So at least they did that?
Yes.
We need to give out a special email later. We'll develop one for whistleblowers on this. Well, let's just make whistleblowers at Infowars.com. Let's make that email right now. It'll be up in the next hour. We need to have construction workers, other people, call us, confirm, so we can have more witnesses to this.
Right. For a long time, the city did say that the mini cave entrances were covered up because of citizens throwing garbage in them, and they showed pictures of piles of trash.
So that was the cover?
That's what I believe was the cover.
But your grandfather said, well, you stay there. We're going to come back in 1 minute, and Lew Rockwell's coming up, specifically what your great-grandfather said. Okay, Lew Rockwell is coming up to talk about campaign 2012, what's happening across the board. We're going to have him joining us. Right now, we're going back to Chris Oden, and since we've been looking into this the last day or so, We have dug up the University of Texas admissions, Collier, Bill Collier, UT, reactor draws safety questions, Austin American Statesman, 1989. So this has been in the news. And we found links to blurbs dealing with concerns about where the waste was going. And so that's a whole other ball of wax. You're saying your great-grandfather, who was the head of superintendent for facilities, said that, oh, people didn't like it in East Austin, so I guess stuff must have been dumped there somewhere. And so then it moved to what was South Austin, but pretty much is the middle of Austin now. Exactly.
Now it borders a fairly high-end community called Westlake. His exact words were, if you ever wonder why your radio doesn't work well near that part of Austin, it's because there is radioactivity there. I personally have witnessed AM radio not functioning as well as it does in other portions of South Austin. So, well, sure. If you doubt that, I mean, if you doubt electricity puts off stuff, when you drive under big power lines, your AM cuts out. Right, and there aren't any power lines in the area except for further west. There is, of course, power generators at the dam. Let's be specific, though, for people, because we're going to put a map on the nightly news tonight, and you guys went and got video yesterday. Mm-hmm. Where exactly is this? It's on the southern side of the Colorado River. I would say less than an eighth of a mile from the low water crossing on Redbud Trail, on the west side of the road. Geographically, there's probably I'd say a 20-foot to 30-foot deep ravine. So it's right over by the hula hut? On the other side of the river. Yeah, on the other side, across. Yeah, and on the downstream side of the dam there. Amazing. And what else did your grandfather say, great-grandfather say? He did describe a fairly complex amount of construction that went on from the early 50s until the 70s, all over Austin for the UT campuses. He did say that the university couldn't get funds for anything else but land, and that's why it's the largest campus in the United States, and they kept on building up and down, according to him. And he said there's as much going on below ground as there was above ground. That's why there's so much secret government stuff. And we got onto this when the cyclotron railgun blew up 2 days ago at a UT facility. And that's KXAN, folks. I mean, we're living in like a weird experiment area, aren't we? Absolutely. I was even shocked to see a fairly large complex or university research complex on the north side of the river, right in the same vicinity, that did have signs posted, restricted access. There's a map on screen. Where should they blow it up? You're saying restricted access area you saw. I would say just... There's the low water crossing right by that. Just to the northwest of Redbud Isle. I'm sorry, just to the southwest. Move the cursor. Says it's one of the oldest university reactors too. I'm sorry, go farther upriver. Upriver. You can move quicker. Much farther upriver. Yep. We'll just do it during them. It's that block over. It's the furthest over right-hand green side. Right by the Bee Caves Preserve there. Yeah, that's it. Okay. At 12 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock, where are there? Looking at Bee Caves Preserve text in the middle of the green. On the mouse, it's 12 o'clock. Right where the bend in the road is. By Forest View Drive or by Redbud Trail? Right there. Redbud Trail, right there. Right there. That's where I know that one major cave entrance was. Yep, that looks right. Oh, we just found it. We just found it on Google Maps. There's the cave right there. Wow, we'll have to. Well, we got the footage tonight for you. InfoWars Nightly News. Lew Rockwell coming up. Thank you so much for your courage. Absolutely. We have a lot of massive news coming up today. You know, a drone crashed a few days ago in Maryland. Now they're reporting that all over the country, but also the big report is, again, out of Fox News on the East Coast. People think it's UFOs now as Pentagon drones fly over the highways. They think it's aliens. Kind of like the big surveillance blimps I've seen ABC News say, it must be an alien, and it's a big blimp with no markings on it with propellers and cameras hanging off the bottom. Because government wouldn't be spying on you with big blimps. No, it must actually be E.T., you know, visiting for Reese's Pieces or something. I mean, it's truly over the top
ridiculous that stuff like this is going on. We're going to be breaking that down. We're also researching right now the nuclear reactors. There's 3 of them in Austin. There's almost no news coverage of this, and a big story we're working on of where they've been dumping the waste. We're also going to be getting into the bizarre White House reaction to John Bryson's 3 hit and runs. Well, 2 hit and runs on one group and then another hit and run. A lot of bizarre behavior on that front. We're going to look at the ongoing meltdown in Europe and the incredible announcements that they're going to restrict ATM withdrawals and impose border checks. So people can come into the euro, but when you try to leave, they're going to impose capital controls. TSA is already doing this, trying to take people's silver and gold, asking about wedding rings. This is in the news, downloading what's on your laptop computers. Everything we've seen in third world dictatorships or Nazi Germany. It's amazing. Now, in a moment, we're going to a man who needs no introduction, Lew Rockwell of LewRockwell.com, head of the Austrian School of Economics group, the von Mises Institute. Just an amazing intellectual mind when it comes to research. Former Chief of Staff for Ron Paul, a great patriot. I want to get him on to look at everything happening in the world, the big news issues, the wars, the euro, the banker bailouts, and obviously out of the gates, get his take on Rand Paul's endorsement of Mitt Romney and why that's created such a firestorm, and get his view on it. But before we do that, I wanted to play just about a minute clip of Ron Paul. And I think Ron Paul, when thinking if he should endorse Romney or not, and Tom Woods has talked about how dangerous that would be. I had the guy that Ron Paul endorsed 4 years ago, the head of the Constitution Party at the time, that candidate. I had him on last night, Chuck Baldwin, to discuss it, and he said, really bad move. Again, Rand can do what he wants, still a great guy. He's fighting drones and the police state and all this other stuff. But if Ron Paul does that, wow, it would be like a nuclear bomb going off, in the words of Chuck Baldwin. I agree. So I want to get the inside intel, if he's been talking to Ron, on what's happening, where all this is going in a moment. But first, here is a short clip of Ron Paul when he was conceding that he was going to drop out in 2008, when he talked about endorsing the Constitution Party. Here he is explaining why, when the McCain people called him, he didn't take, even their respectful call, he didn't take their pleas to endorse McCain as a lesser of two evils, and he explains why. The full clip is up at Infowars.com. The headline on the video is Ron Paul should listen. Ron Paul of 2012 should listen to Ron Paul of 2008. Here is a clip of that CNN press conference.
The majority of the American people, even the recent polling shows that 60% of the American people are unhappy with their choices. If you take the total number of Americans and the percentage that register, and then the percentage that vote, and then the percentage that vote for a candidate, you end up electing a president with 32% of the American people. And because they have been more or less conditioned to believe, well, the two candidates are different, and we have to vote for the lesser of two evils, they end up voting, half the people who vote for the president are voting for the lesser of two evils. And so therefore, 16% of the American people essentially are saying, hey, I like this candidate, and they vote for the president. You know, yesterday, I had a phone call, the first phone call that I personally received or had received from anybody in the McCain candidacy in his campaign. They called, and it was a bit of a surprise to me because their request was that I endorse John McCain today. And I said, well, I don't like the idea of getting about 2 or 3 million people angry at me. So, but they were serious, and it was a respectful call, and the argument was he would do a little less harm than the other candidate. And, you know, we just don't need to do that anymore. You know, I believe it was 1988.
Okay, that's enough.
And I believe
he goes on for 7 more minutes explaining why in a down-to-earth, common-sense fashion. So this is why there was horror at Rand. We're not saying Rand's bad, But then some of the campaign-type operatives, people that admit they don't want Campaign for Liberty being involved in foreign affairs or being against foreign intervention. Well, that's the heart of what makes Ron Paul so good, is that when everybody's laughing at him and they have an audience set to attack him, and they say, aren't you for the wars? And Giuliani goes after him. He says, no, I'm not. That's what's so great about Ron Paul. So Rand starts going for sanctions, something his dad says is an act of war. We turn and look the other way because Rand overall is good. Then he does this endorsement. I understand that Rand is not Ron, but the machinery of Campaign for Liberty is behind Rand and going with the Rand brand. So we are saying, as the people that brought them to the party, because Ron Paul's such an amazing person, and people like Lew Rockwell as well, they're helping him for decades, 30, 40 years, that we're allowed to say, hey, we don't like the direction things are starting to go in. I saw an editorial put up by one of their folks saying, you know, that we're dumb and that we need to learn two things to grow up. No, I have grown up politically. Okay, now joining us is somebody who grew up a long time ago, and that's Lew Rockwell, LewRockwell.com. Thank you for sitting while I went over that video. Lew, what is your take on all of this and the firestorm that has been created? I think overall it's good because it lets some of the forces, kind of the mainline Republicans, trying to take over Campaign for Liberty know that we the people aren't going to let that happen. What's your take?
Well, first of all, the Ron Paul that we see in that clip from the last election is the same Ron Paul that I met in 1975. He's the same Ron Paul today. He's not changed. This is, of course, one of the things we love about him because he is so consistent and his principles are unchanging. He's not going to endorse Mitt Romney any more than he endorsed George W. Bush, any more than he endorsed John McCain. These guys are all fascists. They're all, you know, in favor of all the wars and the police state and all the horrible things that we're seeing come to pass before our eyes right now, whether, as you say, the blimps over Washington and the people think are aliens, when of course it's actually the government that's the alien. So we have no worries about Ron Paul sticking to his principles. I mean, I don't understand how anybody could think otherwise about Ron Paul. He's got a very long record. He does not. He doesn't sell out. This is not Ron Paul. This is why, by the way, he's never had a big political career. You know, he doesn't do that. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours sort of thing of regular politics. He's not a regular politician. He's unique. And for those of people who want to be involved in politics, I make an exception for Ron. But otherwise, I think politics is a snare and a delusion and corrupting and a horrible. It's part of the government, after all. So therefore, you know, it's evil. But Ron Paul's never been part of that. He never has played those games. I'll vote for your pork barrel project. You vote for my pork barrel project. All the stuff that goes on in regular politics, he has never taken part in it. He never would take part in it. And that's why, you know, this guy Romney, he's like the total opposite of Ron. I mean, he's a guy for all the concentration camps, the torture, all the wars, more wars. He's a neocon. He's a fascist. He's a corporate statist. He's a police statist. You know, he has a nice suit. That's about all you can say about Romney. He's got nice hair, too, something I appreciate in other people.
Me too.
But that's about all you can say for Romney. Romney is a monster. Mitt Romney is a very bad man. Ron Paul is not going to endorse a monster. It's just not going to happen. And nobody should think that. Nobody should worry about it.
I know you're a classy guy and don't want to throw stones, but I really want to see Rand rethink this idea that we're going to change the mainline Republicans by compromising with them. I mean, I understand what he's saying intellectually, politically, but also I understand that that way leads to ruin. That's how you join the dark side. And what you said about Mitt Romney, I mean, he makes Bill Clinton look truthful. I mean, he is such an incredible, not even a flip-flopper. He is a total deceiver. And again, I'm not going to support Obama or him. It's so crazy. I mean, you understand why people are pretty upset right now, because I understand Rand is not Ron, but Rand was sold to us like he was.
Well, I don't know I think if people had paid attention to what Rand said about himself, you know, he said from the very beginning, I'm not a libertarian. He's, of course, a far more traditional politician than his dad. And I'm sure he's the best guy in the Senate. And we should compare him to, you know, Jim DeMint or Chuck Schumer or people like that. Nobody compares. There's only one Ron Paul. Ron Paul's unique in all of American history. And I noticed, you know, there are other candidates, congressional candidates and other people who claim to be another Ron Paul.
No, but he is the most famous congressman ever now.
Oh, well, of course he is, but he's never had a normal political career because he doesn't play these games.
Why doesn't Rand see that?
Well, Rand's he's a different person. But you're asking me, why isn't Rand his dad? Well, he's not his dad. Nobody's his dad. And we have to judge Rand on his own.
Well, I respect my dad. I try to be like my father. I mean, if you have a great, wonderful father, why wouldn't you want to be like your father? I don't understand.
Well, I must say I had a great, wonderful father, too, and I do my best to live up to the example he set. In fact, my first political memory is of my dad putting a Taft for President button on my coat. So my dad was a strong Taft Republican, the sort of the Ron Paul of an earlier time, although not as good as Ron, but more like Ron.
Well, stay there, sir. We're going to come
Rand,
right...
Of course, Rand does respect his dad.
Okay, good. Lew Rockwell, stay there. LewRockwell.com. Really appreciate him joining us. His Skype looks like $1 million if you're watching at prisonplanet.tv. We'll be back with more. Well, hardly anybody out there in the world, other than like Ron Paul's family, knows him better than Lew Rockwell, his former chief of staff. That is great news, Lew, that you're saying that Ron Paul will not be endorsing Mitt Romney. And also, little birds are telling me that there are moves to clean up Campaign for Liberty that has got some people up at the top of it that would like to move things more towards the mainline Republican front.
Well, Ron, as you know, it's tough to say what issue has been the most important to him. Obviously, the Fed has been very important. Austrian economics has been very, very important. But the issue that's closest to his heart is the issue of war and peace. There have been millions of people murdered in just these recent wars. Who knows how many have been murdered throughout history. And so this is a man of peace. He's dedicated to peace. He's a non-interventionist in foreign policy. He's opposing the neocons next war. They want to murder everybody in Syria, and they want to murder everybody in Iran. Who knows where they want to turn their murder guns next. So again, we can count on Ron Paul. Whether there may be some people who are not interested in these issues, I think that's highly unfortunate. I agree with Murray Rothbard that the question of war and peace is the key issue, especially when the wars are going on. It's what grows the state. It's what suppresses dissent, and of course, it builds mountains of corpses. So Ron Paul is dedicated to that issue, and I think it's unfortunate that there are people who aren't. Foreign policy is so important. Obviously, the domestic policy is important, all the fascist policies of the government and all the other things Ron fights against. But he is a broad spectrum guy, and he's right that that all these things are so important. Again, the Fed, monetary policy, what the banksters do to us, the growing police
states' rights,
absolutely, decentralism. In my own view, of course, the U.S. government, the United States is far too big. Aristotle thought that if you had more than 50,000 citizens, you would lose your liberty in a city-state. Certainly, you can't have a free country the size of the U.S. It can't work. When you have a government seeking to control a territory the size of the U.S., then of course it brings on tyranny. So yeah, in my view, I'm not speaking for Ron Paul, of course. I'd like to see the U.S. broken up. I'd like to see the states separate. Even the states are probably too big. I'd like to live in a city-state myself. So the smaller the governments. Hans Hoppe makes this point about Germany before the Treaty of Westphalia, when they were like 700 little political entities that comprised Germany. They all had the same language and much of the same culture and so forth, the same sort of national identity, but they were politically separate. That's freedom. I mean, that's the way it ought to be.
Well, there's historically, that sounds radical, but it's not. It creates firewalls to tyranny, and it creates diversity of choice. And so, I mean, look at how New York's trying to get laws passed federally where everybody has to raise their taxes. That's what the UN wants with the OECD. That's what the New World Order is a global government to have total control so there's nowhere to run.
No, that's right. That's, of course, what the EU is all about creating the horrifying notion of a United States of Europe where everybody's conglomerated, and then they, of course, want to combine the America and the EU and Japan. This is, of course, David Rockefeller's original dream into the nucleus of a world government, and then bring everybody else under the power of this world government. Sure, this is what they want. This is the exact opposite of liberty. It's the opposite of civilization. They want worldwide Keynesianism, which unfortunately they've pretty much gotten. This is why we have a worldwide depression or recession right now. So yeah, the fight for states' rights, which Ron Paul is just great on, and decentralism is the fight for liberty.
I totally agree with you. We're going to break in a few minutes here, but I think it's good we're having this debate with Rand and Ron and all this, because it really is about the people in the final equation. And if we're not there telling Ron Paul and Rand what we believe in, especially with Rand, it's going to let other influences come in. So I see all of this as healthy.
Well, sure. I mean, of course, we want to tell the people that we like what we like, and if we disagree with something. And Ron has always been very open to hearing from people who disagree with them. It's one of the reasons, you know, it's like an odd thing to say about Ron Paul. He's a great politician in this sense. In the old days when he ran for Congress, he would wear out 3 or 4 pairs of shoes walking door to door, meeting people. He loves talking to people. He loves hearing objections and answering them. He loves hearing, of course, where people agree with him, but where they don't agree with him, too. So, you know, it's important. Of course, we have to let people know what we think. You and I hear from people who agree with us and don't agree with us, too. And we like that as well. This is
exactly. It's government that doesn't want to have that feedback. Long segment coming up. We're going to cover a host of issues with Lew Rockwell. LewRockwell.com. Check it out. Powerful website. I'm Alex Jones of PrisonPlanet.tv. We'll be right back. In a moment, we're going to play another clip from that video. Ron Paul of 2012 needs to listen to Ron Paul of 2008. And I rarely have a Ron Paul clip, or I don't think ever, and then piggyback on it selling something. But knowledge is power. It's win-win. We promote what we believe in. You fund us with your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships to see the nightly news and video of the daytime show. Buying the high-quality water filters like ProPure and getting 10% discount with promo code WATER at Infowars.com or InfoWarsShop.com. Supporting our online sponsors, our radio sponsors, buying the books, the videos, the T-shirts. We don't come with a gun and make you listen to the show or buy the products. And that's why the mainstream media, Nightline, MSNBC, whenever they're here, they're like, you make money. I'm like, well, I didn't get a banker bailout like NBC got. $500 million, it was reported, over 2 years of bailout money. I'm just here selling high-quality products I use. Again, that's how they operate. We're not ever supposed to, in the free market, build our own system and vote with our dollars. But that's a side issue. The point is that go to Infowars.com, because Ron Paul talked about why you don't vote for the lesser of two evils and how Bill Clinton's mentor, Harold Quigley at Georgetown, wrote a book about the elite that he endorsed. They let him into the Bilderberg archives, 1,400 pages long. I've actually read almost the whole thing. To be honest, there's a few pages I skipped, a little boring history lessons. Tragedy and Hope. It's back in print. Believe me, he's dead. He's not glad it's back in print because they didn't want the public reading this. Available at Infowars.com. Discounted. It gets a free citizen rule book with every order. And back in print because they sold out all the ones that were printed back in the 70s. None dare call it conspiracy, the book that crystallized my awakening at about 13 years old when a couple of these were on the bookshelf because one of my dad's John Birch Society buddies was always bringing them by. And I pulled it off the shelf and read it. And I'd already read so much history. I was kind of a bookworm slash jock. But the point is that it all made sense. And that's what created much of who Alex Jones is today. It's back in print, a new, lovely little edition, $14 at Infowars.com today, or InfoWarsShop.com, or call 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. You can also write to us at P.O. Box 19549, Austin, Texas, 78760. Let's play a minute or so of Ron Paul talking about tragedy and hope and what Carol Quigley said about the lesser of two evils and how the system tries to control the left and the right. And then we'll get the take on that from iconic libertarian and, I guess, anarcho-capitalist, you could call him, Lew Rockwell, here in just a moment. But here's Ron Paul from his concession speech or what have you, talking about would he join a third party back in 2008. He didn't endorse John McCain. Here it is.
You know, quite a few years ago, when I think it was when Bill Clinton was inaugurated, it was one of his speeches, he recognized one single individual as being very important to him philosophically. And that was a bit of surprise because I knew about the individual, And some of you may know about him, but it's worth looking into. And his name was Carroll Quigley. He wrote the book Tragedy and Hope. Now, the important part of Tragedy and Hope and Carroll Quigley is that he claims that he was on the inside and part of the group that, did the planning. But why did he write Tragedy and Hope? To expose these people behind the scenes? Because he believed they were far enough advanced, it didn't have to be secret, they could be out in the open, and this is the way it works. It's a tragedy if you don't accept this, and there's hope if you know who runs the show. That's my interpretation, but I believe it's correct. But let me read a quote from him, and thinking about where he's coming from. He says, the argument that the two parties should represent opposed ideals and policies, one perhaps the right and the other of the left, is a foolish idea, acceptable only to the doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical, so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shift in policy. I mean, I think that is profound statement, because it tells us what's going on and why things don't change.
All right, so there you go. Lew Rockwell.
Here today.
Again, your take on what Ron Paul said 4 years ago. I mean, that says it all. And what's your view on this whole global corporate monopoly men system?
Of course, Carroll Quigley was exactly right, very influential professor at Georgetown University for many years. And as Ron mentioned, Clinton cited him and thanked him in his acceptance speech at the Democratic Convention. But it's absolutely true, and we just have to look at the two parties. The two parties are identical. As Butler Schaefer says, two wings of the same bird of prey. They're both part of the government. That's why they can't be taken over, by the way. It's not any more possible to take over the Republican Party than you can take over the Department of Justice. And they're evil. They're part of the government. But yes, they're both set up to be slightly different rhetorically, but in policies, be exactly the same. Mitt Romney is a Goldman Sachs guy. Barack Obama is a Goldman Sachs guy. Barack Obama's for all these wars. Mitt Romney's for all these wars. They're both for the police state and so forth. So this is why we have a two-party system. It's why they don't want multiple parties, and it's why there's no, except in style, there's no difference. This is not an accident. It's deliberate. It's why they love democracy. One of the many reasons they love democracy, been a great thing for the growth of the state. Everybody thinks Hans Hoppe's great book on democracy, The God That Failed, is the key guide to why democracy, as it's developed, is just an instrument for the state to use against the rest of us. And Quigley, of course, is very important to read. I'm so glad you're bringing Gary Allen's book back into print. Gary Allen was a very great man, great writer, and this is a wonderful book, Alex. So these are all things worth reading. And as usual, as you point out in this YouTube from Ron, he's always worth listening to. That's true today. It was true 30 or 40 years ago. It was true when he first got into public life in reaction to Richard Nixon's closing of the gold window and imposing price and wage controls on the economy in 1971. He's the same guy, and he's a sure guide to all this sort of thing. And look him up on YouTube. Of all these, he's got many YouTubes from all his earlier campaigns, from his congressional speeches. They're all worth listening to. And he's just but again, don't expect anybody else to be Ron Paul. There's only been one Ron Paul, and I would say that even though I support Ron Paul in all his, in everything he does in terms of his political races, politics is a snare and a delusion. I mean, there's only one Ron Paul. Maybe there will be somebody else in the future. We can't rule it out. But there's only one of these guys in 200 years, so they don't come along very often. And we should appreciate what we've got. We should support him, read him, author of many important books. He's also a great intellectual. I mean, this again separates him. He's a reader. Separates him from the people in politics who aren't readers, who aren't intellectuals.
Oh, I got to tell you, I've interviewed
Ron.
Ron.
Tells him to do.
I mean, I've interviewed Ron more than 150 times or so. It might even be 200 if you count out on the road, my crew asking him questions, and my reporters, probably more than 200. You can ask him something that just broke that day that's pretty obscure, and he knows about it. I don't think I've ever brought anything up to him that he didn't already know about, and then he'll know about stuff I don't know about. I mean, he's just such a voracious researcher. It's like even in that piece where the Sacha Baron Cohen tries to corner him in there in the room, Ron Paul's sitting there reading the newspaper. I mean, I guess that's all he's doing is researching.
He reads all the time. He's got a huge personal library. He's read it all. I mean, he's read our enemies. He's read all the good guys. It's why he's actual. He doesn't. You know, he's a medical doctor, but he might as well be an Austrian economist too. He's read everything. He's read thoroughly in history and in political philosophy and many different areas, investments and so forth. I mean, he really is. He really is a Renaissance man, and he's so different from the other people in the Congress. I mean, you can't. He stands out like a healthy thumb, not a sore thumb, among all those boobs and creeps and crooks and morons and criminals that compose the U.S. government. I mean, he really is. You know, he's the minister in the whorehouse or something. I mean, he just is so different, so different from the rest of them. And so there's just one Ron.
Lew, I want to shift gears into a bunch of subjects and also ask you what's number one on your plate, your radar right now. But, you know, I get this from people who are on the left. They understand the corruption of government, but they always think they can fix it. They talk about the American system, but you go research it. You know, a lot of that government involvement is actually what ends up causing the Civil War. If you actually go back and look at some of the people that were involved in it, I mean, it just asks for it. The bigger the government, the worse the society. And then I see the criticism, oh, Ron Paul wants you to be high. He wants you to be on drugs because of drug decriminalization. But every drug dealer I've seen interviewed says don't ever legalize them because that would drive down the price probably 500 to 1,000%. I mean, this is 2-year-old level information to understand. And Republicans attack him and say he wants you to be on drugs. Democrats attack him. But you see the American people. I mean, even Pat Robertson says decriminalize marijuana now. I mean, it really seems that people are starting to get it, and that some of the European countries, as you know, that have decriminalized it have seen more than 50% reductions in drug use. It takes the money, it takes the glamour out of it, it takes the poisonous stuff that gets mixed with the street garbage. Look at alcohol, tripled in use, corruption bloomed during 9 years of prohibition. I mean, isn't this an idea whose time has come? And what do you see the critics doing, trying to demonize Ron Paul, yourself, myself, and others that want decriminalization?
Well, of course, the demonization is the word, and you know, if there's anybody should be able to tell about Ron Paul, he's Mr. Straight. I mean, he's not. He doesn't use drugs. It's very. He only started to have an occasional glass of wine when he was no longer in medical practice. I mean, this guy is so straight and so normal and so regular and so principled. He's never used drugs. In fact, he's done a lot of work in his medical career to try to help people get off drugs if they want to. But he understands that, first of all, as Mises pointed out, we have the right to decide what we put in our bodies. This is not somebody else's decision to make. We as adults have this right. And we know that a lot of stuff that the government promotes as wonderful for us, high fructose corn syrup, and go right down the list of all the horrible things that they promote, are actually very bad for us. Probably far worse than smoking a marijuana cigarette. And things like marijuana are actually very good for many medical conditions. But that, again, people, as a matter of the control of their own bodies, control of their own lives, have the right to do what they want to do. But, of course, the government, we always have to remember the government is never, I don't want to shock anybody, the government's not a charitable organization. The government doesn't actually care about you. They want your money and they want power over you. So this is why they want the drug war. They also make vast amounts from all the bribes they get from the drug dealers. But I think more and more Americans are realizing, especially on the medicinal marijuana question, but on many other related issues, that they don't want the government running this. It's made things far worse. Look at, they're destroying Mexico right now with the Bush enforced drug war and Obama enforced drug war in Mexico. 50,000 people dead, the whole country being wrecked. Our country has been largely wrecked. And of course, it doesn't keep drugs out. The people who love the drug war will say, well, what, you want to have drugs? They can't keep drugs out of the federal prisons, let alone excuse me, let alone out of any other place.
Well, exactly. So I mean, they're the ones...
They promote drugs use. They promote drug use.
Yeah, they're the ones making it more valuable than gold. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. You decriminalize it, takes the money out of it, and crime rates just absolutely plunge. Expanding on this, Lou, has it ever been more obvious that government is gearing up for war with the people? I want to get your take on admitted re-education camps. The Army admitted the document we got a month ago was accurate. They said it's classified. We get in trouble. We're bad to have it. They're admitting that torture. Obama says he'll kill whoever he wants. They're announcing local police to have the Army. The Secretary of the Army has put out a new CFR report saying we want to have Army to respond as SWAT teams in every town, regular Army. We're seeing 30,000 armed drones. We're seeing the head of the CIA come out 2 months ago and say, yes, all the new tech has back doors. We're watching and listening to you without warrants. I mean, it's even blowing me away just how criminal. It's like they're going crazy. Is this an attempt to intimidate us because they know we're waking up, or is this just an orgy of control freaks that think they're unstoppable? I want your expert opinion on that, Lew Rockwell.
Well, I think they are, they are control freaks, of course. Everybody who goes into government, especially the people who rise in government, are like this. They like hurting people. They like controlling people, and they want, of course, our money. But they have what St. Augustine called the lust for power, the libido dominandi. They want to rule others. They lust to rule others. They lust to kill. These are bad people. These are not like your next door neighbor. People in government are bad people. But unfortunately, let me point out, every government would like to be a totalitarian government if they could get away with it. It's only the people's opposition that prevents it. And after the whole business of 9/11, the American people's opposition to government tyranny dramatically reduced because they became terrified of the Muslims under the bed and all the rest of the baloney. So when that happened, the government just expands like an evil balloon to take over everything. And the bigger the government gets, the more torturers and people who just love feeling you up at the airport. I mean, this is the government. And so we're in a fight for our lives, of course. On the other hand, I think, and Ron Paul shows this with the millions of kids that he's brought into our movement, more and more opposition is springing up to this. So there's the normal battle, which goes on through all of history between what Murray Rothbard called power and market, between the private society and the violence promoters. We have the people who use violence. Some of them we call criminals, the muggers, murderers, rapists, and burglars, and so forth. Others we call the government, although they have exactly the same moral compass as the murderers, the rapists, and the burglars. And so this is the great fight. So this is the fight we're engaged in. We have to, first of all, learn from people like you, Alex. We have to read the great books of Mises and Rothbard and all the great Austrian economists, the great libertarians, and understand why the government is our enemy, what we can do about it. But the first thing is we have to change ourselves to become opponents of all of this, intellectual opponents, withdraw our consent, don't laugh at the government, explain to others about government lies, and of course every word that comes out of their mouths is a lie. So these people are our enemy, not some alleged terrorists in Yemen. People in Washington are our enemies. They want every bit of control over our lives. We see 1984, Orwell's novel, coming true right before our eyes. All the stuff that I've fought all my life, you too, Alex, we see it happening at just an unbelievable pace right now. But still, they need the people's consent.
Yes, but why is it going into overdrive? I mean, I know historically corruption gets to a point and always does this, and generally that's when you get liberty back if you're not totally destroyed. But, I mean, this is cartoon level, the ridiculous lying, and city after city, it turns out they hire the head TSA person is convicted pedophiles or deep-frocked priest, and just the crimes and the trillions every year stolen at the Pentagon and CIA aircraft, and they have the troops line up and admit they're growing the opium to desensitize people, because they had to kill Pat Tillman because he spoke out. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and I wonder what's coming next. I mean, they've gone crazy.
Well, one thing we can be sure of, there is nothing beyond them. If they decide not to do some horrendous thing to us, it's only because they haven't thought of it, or they can't get it organized because they're the government, or they think it's not in their interest. But this bunch would never say, oh, we can't do that because it would be wrong. That is never a consideration. So we can expect the worst from them. It's why we have to be the best, why we have to arm ourselves, why we have to, as I said, laugh at them, deny them, undermine them, subvert them in every way we can.
It's funny you say that, because every time we put up a TSA video making fun of them, YouTube bans it, but they'll let us put up anything else against them. But literally, they do not like being made fun of.
No, and this is an ancient point, that the prince can take almost anything except being laughed at. When they laugh at the government, that's why they ban jokes at the airport. You can actually go to jail for telling a joke in the land of the First Amendment. So but again, you have to first educate yourself. As Albert J. Knox said, about the one thing you can do for the human race is present it with one improved unit. You have to make yourself better. You make yourself better by learning more, not what you get in the government schools or from the government media or the government press releases. All the columnists and so forth are doing nothing but promoting the government line. You have to be radically different. You have to understand what Murray Rothbard said, that the state is a gang of thieves writ large. If you understand that, if you understand the nature of government, you understand that it not only doesn't have your best interests at heart, it's your enemy. It's the enemy of your children. It's the enemy of your future. It's the enemy of all your descendants. It's the enemy of everything you believe in. It's the enemy of your religion. It's the enemy of your community, your home, your business. It is the enemy. So not these guys overseas, not the alleged terrorists, the people who were terrorizing you.
Well, I was about to say,
taking all your money. It's the government.
Sure. I mean, let's just say Al-Qaeda really did 9/11. All Easter bunnies are, real. All of this. Okay, let's say it's real. You got a better chance of a honeybee killing you. They've done national news stories on that than these people. But then it's in the LA Times and it's in the Associated Press in the back of the paper that Al-Qaeda in Al-Qaeda uniforms with Al-Qaeda patches and flags took over Libya, murdered people en masse. Obama said bombing is a peace operation, not war. The Peace Prize winner.
Yeah.
Again, it's like dark satire. It's like a Kurt Vonnegut novel. And now they're using Al-Qaeda to go in and bomb Syria, blow up police stations. Hillary lies and says Russia's sending them helicopters. Turns out that's a lie. I mean, it's crazy that the government is using Al-Qaeda as their jihadi brigade, as they did against the Russians back in the 80s, and then I'm told, give my rights up, let them grope my wife and children at the airport for people that work for them publicly.
Well, sure, and of course, and as you mentioned, the whole Syria thing is a trick. I mean, it's the CIA and the Mossad funding these various so-called rebels who were trying to overthrow the last non-Islamic fundamentalist government in the Arab world, the last secular Arab government. They did it in Iraq, and Al-Qaeda is coming in. The U.S., like any empire, as the Romans used to say, divide and rule, divide and conquer. So they want to happen in Libya. The U.S. supported Al-Qaeda in the war against the Russians in Afghanistan, supported Osama bin Laden. And so they're using them again in Syria. There's a similar group they're funding in Iran to cause various terrorist incidents.
And I know you know this, but people can even see it in the Washington Post from like 15 years ago. It's so amazing that on top of all this, the billions were spent over the decades paying for the textbooks saying kill Americans, jihad this. Our government funded the radical madrasas because they don't want the Arabs who invented mathematics and science to become industrialized to compete. They want a bunch of crazy guys, the bad guys in Team America running around. I mean, imagine the magnitude of that.
Well, and they want to do the Arabs what they want to do the rest of us, this. And so they want the Arabs backward. They want them ill-educated. They want them economically backward. And in order to control them, control the oil, and to break up all the countries in the Middle East. This is the open neocon plan and that was issued before Bush's first Iraq war. They want to break up all these Muslim countries. The better to control them and to control all the oil. This is what the U.S. would like to do everywhere. The Romans pulled the same thing. This is nothing new. I'm sure the Assyrians or the Babylonians and the Egyptians and all the other empires did it. And America, of course, is not a republic. It's an empire. We're not a free country anymore. We're a semi-free country. We're not the richest country in the world. They can all raise the foam finger #1 all they want. We're not exceptional. We're regular people. This is not the greatest country ever to exist in the history of the human race and all the rest of that nonsense. Switzerland, I mean, there are a lot of other great countries in the world. There have been many great countries. Every civilization has got good things about it. Every civilization has got bad things about it. But the notion that all this, constant.
All this tyranny is what America.
We're the greatest, and we can kill everybody because we're the best, and God has blessed us, and all that sort of stuff. It's been an unfortunate thread throughout of American history. Kill all the Indians because they were savages and so forth. So there's bad stuff in every country, including in America. We're not the best people in the world. It's just pride, right? It's a sin of pride. And it's very dangerous. And the typical American feels we can kill everybody all over the world, and then they're astonished that maybe people don't like that, don't like having their families, their children butchered. And this is why we're hated. We as a country, I shouldn't say we, the U.S. government is hated all over the world. Hated. No American realizes this. We're hated. And this is why when the dollar goes down, we're going to see some interesting developments in terms of other countries. Everybody hates being under the U.S. yoke. They don't like it. And every decent American should hate being under the yoke of D.C. himself or herself as well.
And D.C. itself has been captured by the mega bankers. I'm going to put you on the spot because we got you on a little bit late today. We got a 1-minute break. I want to come back with 5 final minutes on what you think is happening in Europe, where you think that's going to go, how we don't let them use the crisis that's coming, as Ron Paul said a decade ago, as you said over a decade ago, from becoming total government, and instead of using it to reduce all this tyranny. But we're going to break in a minute. What else is important on your radar screen, Lew Rockwell of LewRockwell.com?
Well, it's of course all the stuff Alex, that you talk about. I mean, the police state, the drones. I was glad to see Rand Paul introduce a bill that if they're going to send a drone to spy on you, they got to have a search warrant. Of course, there are no search warrants. There aren't. We live in an authoritarian society. We're moving towards totalitarianism. But nevertheless, we can object to it. It's actually possible to stop it. We don't have to become slaves. Although that's, of course, the way things are headed.
Stay there. Back in 1 minute with 5 more minutes of Lew Rockwell, then Gary Johnson. All right, we got Lew Rockwell of LewRockwell.com with us for 5 more minutes. And he was bringing up what's happening in Europe. I mean, I was reading, they're saying you can come into Euro, but you can't leave. We're going to search you. We're going to take your money. ATM withdrawals will be restricted. And I heard this from sources, Bob Chapman, State Department sources, a year and a half ago. The TSA is acting like this now on the highways. They admit that's going to be their mission. I mean, at a certain point, I avoid the airports now with my family, but I mean, if they try to pull me over and grope my family as a symbol of my submission to them, my prisoner training, I don't know what I'm going to do at this point, Lew. What's your take on what's happening in Europe and anything else on your radar?
Pick up on your last point. We've already had a number of cases where people's cash has been confiscated from them. The cops stop them, and this is their own cash. They've earned it honestly. But yeah, the government doesn't want you to have it. I would say, always do the opposite of what the government wants you to do. And whether you're a European or an American, I hope to goodness everybody has got some significant amount of cash outside of the banks. Of course, you ought to have gold and silver as well as the key part of your investments. But you ought to have some cash. It's always fun to take cash out of the bank. They hate it. It's a fun thing to go and take. They don't want you to do it, and it's because they pyramid on it. They inflate on top of it. So you're helping all of society as well as yourself when you take some money out of the bank. And I hope people in Europe are doing this. And of course, we've seen this in Argentina and other places where ATM withdrawals have indeed been restricted. And so take that as a signal. What's happening in Europe? Well, everybody's being crucified for the sake of the banks. They talk about bailing out Greece. They're not bailing out Greece. Spain is not being bailed out. I was glad at least Spain did things a little more honestly this time. The money went directly to the banks. It didn't even go through the government. So all this is about bailing out the banks, not Greece being bailed out or whatever, and the higher taxes and so forth being forced on these countries. It's to pay off the banks, all the banks that hold the government debt. And there's no way to do it, by the way. There is going to have to be a default. There's not enough productivity in the whole world to undo what these rotten banks have done, these fractional reserve banksters who are in league with the government. Same in our own country. They're very, very powerful. Europe and the United States are sort of bankocracies. We saw it when Jamie Dimon was testifying before the Senate committee the other day, and they're all bowing and scraping before him. The senators were salaaming Jamie Dimon because, of course, it is the big banks that are in control. But one thing First of all, you need to educate yourself about banking. Murray Rothbard's great book, The Mystery of Banking, I can't recommend. And you don't need to be an economist. It's so well written, so easy to read, and so informative. You'll understand for the first time in your life what banking is about and what's wrong with the current state of banking. And but again, take your money out of the bank. Deal as much as you can in cash. You know, they hate it. And in fact,
they want the cashless society so they can, like Bank of America, force fees on $5 every time you use your own bank card.
No,
we just lost Lew's Skype there for just a moment. We'll see if he's able to come back up. If not, that was a powerful interview with Lew Rockwell of LewRockwell.com, and I totally agree with him on the Ron Paul thing. There's no way he's going to be endorsing Mitt Romney. And people that say, hey, get behind the Republicans, Obama's bad. Look, the whole system's a fraud. We got to stop playing games. The reason I supported Ron Paul is because, okay, he's back. We got 1 minute to say bye. Thank you so much, Lew Rockwell. How do we support LewRockwell.com?
Well, first read it, LEWRockwell.com, and look at our ads. We're supported, of course, in the voluntary free market, unlike the government, which is supported by a gun to your head to grab your money, just like you, Alex. It's all the voluntary free market. So take a look at our ads. We also welcome contributions if you like what the site is. But most important, read it. It's new every day, except the weekend is one single day.
It's invaluable. Thank you. Lew, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, we'll be back with Governor Gary Johnson running for president as a libertarian. Hopefully Ron Paul will endorse him. We'll be right back. Well, Governor Gary Johnson joins us for the next 52 minutes. We will take a few calls starting at the bottom of the hour if you'd like to talk to Governor Johnson specifically on policies, issues, election 2012, how you can support him. He is the Libertarian presidential nominee and candidate for 2012 for president. And Governor Johnson has been referred to as the most fiscally conservative governor in the country. He was the Republican governor of New Mexico from 95 to 2003. He is best known for his veto record, which includes over 750 vetoes. So he's kind of like a Ron Paul-style governor. But he's also for decriminalization of marijuana, a lot of other issues. He is a true libertarian in every sense of the word. And I hope Ron Paul endorses him, because Ron Paul endorsed Chuck Baldwin for the Constitution Party 4 years ago when it was clear Ron Paul couldn't win because of media demonization and cheating and things like that. Same thing happened this time, but he had even more support. Rand has created a firestorm by supporting Mitt Romney. And let me tell you, that is, again, the night and day compared to somebody like Governor Johnson. It's not just that he endorsed some Republican, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mitt Romney, who changes like a weather vane, who constantly flip-flops, who wrote what became Obamacare. I don't want to get into a rant. The point is that you'll never build a third party. You'll never break the stranglehold of the Crips and the Bloods, the Republicans and the Democrats, as Ventura calls them, if we don't start changing things. And he should be in the national debates. It shouldn't just be Mitt Romney and Obama, both paid for by Goldman Sachs, who have different rhetoric. One's against gay marriage, one's for it. Total football issue that they just bring up to distract people, regardless of which side of that you're on. And we're going to get Governor Johnson's take on all this, his policies and more, joining us via video Skype if you're watching at prisonplanet.tv or listening on XM 166 or other systems. Sir, obviously I want to get into your campaign, but what do you make and what have your supporters made of Rand Paul coming out and endorsing Mitt Romney? And are you obviously hoping that Ron Paul will endorse you and swing his huge grassroots of tens of millions towards you?
Well, Alex, I was asked for Ron Paul's endorsement by Ron Paul in 2008. I readily gave that endorsement. And when I dropped out of the Republican Party, Republican process here running for president, I asked all my supporters, hey, support Ron Paul. So I'm a Ron Paul fan. I think by his own admission, he's not going to get the nomination So where does his support go? I'd love to have his support. I think that what he and I are saying are the same. Look, I think it's important that I am in the national debates against Romney and Obama. I'm going to be the only candidate that doesn't want to bomb Iran. I'm going to be the only candidate that wants to get out of Afghanistan now, bring home the troops. I'm the only candidate that's advocating, I'm promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013, believing that if we don't fix our budget, that if we don't spend within our means, we're going to find ourselves in the midst of a monetary collapse. And what that is that the money that we have doesn't buy a thing, and I don't see life in America as very pleasant when the money that we have doesn't buy a thing.
And Ron Paul needs to endorse you sooner rather than later because...
Yeah, you know, Alex, I'm not expecting his endorsement. So we're not asking for it. I'm not expecting it. But that said, it's about his supporter. It's about everybody listening, I think, and everybody listening having a voice. And I'm presenting myself as that voice.
But it's a no-brainer. If he didn't endorse John McCain, then he can't endorse Mitt Romney. He's got to. He was a Libertarian presidential candidate in '88, as you know.
Well, I know that, and I think there's Rand coming out and endorsing Romney. I mean, that's all about politics and somehow staying part of the Republican Party. I talked to Republican supporters of Ron Paul in Fort Worth just the other night, and they were imploring me to stay within the Republican Party and to work within the Republican Party, that they had worked really hard to make changes within the Republican Party and wanted those changes to stick. Look, I completely agree with that. I applaud all the Ron Paul supporters that have worked so hard to really try and change and continue to try and change the Republican Party. But come over to the Libertarian Party. There aren't any changes that are going to have to be made.
Well, if anybody thinks Mitt Romney is going to turn against Goldman Sachs and the globalists and all the rest of it, they've got another thing coming. I mean, Mitt Romney is going to do what his special interests want him to do, and that's why I'm worried about Rand down the road, because Romney probably will get in. You know, you're there basically to inject real issues. I wish you would win, but people should get behind you. And everybody's turning against Obama right now. Barring some big crisis or war or staged event, I think Obama's toast. The writing's on the wall. The left is turning against him. The establishment's turning against him. It's starting to look like a rout here. The sharks smell blood. And then it's going to be Mitt Romney, and Rand Paul now has hitched his wagon to that. What's he going to do when Mitt Romney says torture is good, NDAA is good, attack Iran is good? I mean, that's what Mitt Romney stands for.
It is what Mitt Romney stands for. Mitt Romney says, hey, let's balance the federal budget, but you know what? We need to grow defense spending a little bit, and we need to hold Medicare harmless. Well, you can't do that. I finished the second grade. The mathematics doesn't add up. Look, we need to cut $1.4 trillion from the federal budget now. That is a 43% reduction in federal spending. I would be the only candidate if I'm in the debates. A Libertarian candidate for president, me. I'm going to be on the ballot in all 50 states. I think that is very significant.
No, I agree. I agree. Governor, people should get behind you. And then the argument, well, that'll just put Obama in. I don't think that squares with it. I mean, I think you're going to have a lot of Democrats who are mad at Obama as well voting for you.
Well, really, I come at Libertarian candidate. I being the Libertarian nominee for president. Me, I'm going to come at Obama hard from the left, from a standpoint of civil liberties, and I'm going to come at Romney hard from the right, from the standpoint of dollars and cents and balancing the federal budget. In the few states where they've actually done an analysis of who I take more votes from, I actually take more votes from Obama, which doesn't surprise me, but the analysis is somewhat mixed, which holds to my belief that I end up taking equally from both parties, and I take from a group independents that wouldn't ordinarily vote. Well, I think maybe I'm going to give independents a reason to vote, or I'm going to give a lot of people a reason to vote, that their vote would actually be cast in an ideological way that says, look, we care about civil liberties, and look, we care about a balanced budget.
Where do you stand? Because Rand Paul is doing some good work saying he's proposing a bill protecting Americans from drone surveillance without warrants. Well, what about the Pentagon? They're not supposed to be domestically involved. And now, the head of the Army came out in the CFR report 2 weeks ago and said, hey, we're going to put armed troops in every city to aid the police. I mean, I might as well move to Guatemala or Nigeria or Saudi Arabia or get to teleport back to Nazi Germany or North Korea right now. I mean, just the racing of the CIA director saying, we're listening to you without warrants, ha, ha, ha. Why do you think they're going so crazy right now, both political parties, like a cancer metastasizing? I mean, what's your take on all that?
Well, it's about electing leaders that aren't standing up to this. We need to have a leader stand up against this. I'm going to be the only candidate for president that wants to abolish the Department of Homeland Security. This stuff, as you point out, every single day, it's getting worse, not better. And if you think it's going to change electing Romney, you're crazy. And of course, this has gotten worse under Obama. It's going to continue to get worse under Obama.
It is, absolutely. Again, GaryJohnson2012.com. Is that the best website for folks to visit?
That is the best website to visit. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. GaryJohnson2012.com, folks. And you win. A protest vote, injecting ideas. He could win. I mean, things have happened like this. But regardless, we've got to support somebody from outside the power structure. I'm sorry, I'm not endorsing Mitt Romney, folks, the author of Obamacare, Mr. Anti-Gun, any of it. It's not going to happen. He loves the drug war. He loves, all of it. We've got to support somebody else. Now, I know they fought to keep you out of debates. They fought to keep you. The system's scared of you because they know you're a real constitutional libertarian, / old-line conservative common sense. So they're very, very afraid of you. They've tried to really suppress you like they did Ron Paul 4 years ago. What do we do, because you're on in all 50 states, to make sure you're in the debate when the two parties have hijacked that? What do we do to make sure that they can't blacklist you?
Well, it's getting online, GaryJohnson2012.com, to get the following information, and that is contact all the polling organizations so that I'm in the polls. That was really the issue with the debates and the Republican Party. I wasn't in the polls that determined who got in the debates. When I'm in the polls right now, I'm polling anywhere between 7 and 9% nationally. I think the biggest contributor to the fact that I'm 7 to 9% is the fact that I'm the third name. But as this goes forward, it's more than just a third name. It is someone who is stronger than Obama on civil liberties, and it's someone who's stronger than Mitt Romney when it comes to dollars and cents.
Governor, stay there. Stay there. We got to go to break. Wow. But I mean, what a great point. They won't even let him get his name in the polls. Or like when Ron Paul would win a debate and win in the poll, they just wouldn't show him. Incredible. Look at the fraud. The system does not want us supporting Gary Johnson. We need to. Libertarian or president, not supporting Mitt Romney. Your calls are coming up in the next segment for Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico, very successful out there, sticking to his promises. And he is running as a Libertarian candidate. And in the past, Ron Paul would have endorsed the Libertarian candidate or the Constitution Party candidate. And I'm telling you, it will be a departure from what Ron Paul normally does, and the Ron Paul we love, if he doesn't endorse somebody. And Gary Johnson is who he needs to endorse. I know that some people that are working for Ron Paul, the Politico types, want to be big stars in the Republican Party, but this isn't about that. It isn't about... just going into the Republican Party and being taken over. And I know a lot of Ron Paul people think that's happening. And that's good. But we've had a great Republican Party platform here in Texas for a long time. They never follow it. So the ideas of, well, maybe Ron Paul should endorse Romney so he gets a speaking slot that almost no one watches now. I mean, these things are a joke. These things are a joke. And there's a real disenchantment. Congress has a 9% approval rating. Governor Johnson... It took people only 6 months to start waking up to Obama, that he'd conned them. Used to, it took people 3-4 years to wake up to a politician. Are voters starting to get more savvy? I mean, why do you think the American people are buying millions of guns a month?
No, I think that that's exactly the case. And I would like to point out that so much is made about working together. Working together is just code in Washington to spend more money. I'd like to point out that when it comes to Obama and Romney, that I have more governmental executive experience than the two of them combined. And if your initial knee-jerk is, we don't need people with more government experience, my experience in government is saying no to government spending, is saying no to the attacks on our civil liberties. I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. That's my experience. I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. I am promising to veto any legislation where expenses exceed revenue. Are they going to override my veto? Yeah, they sure are. They're going to have to. But I'm going to argue that spending will be lower in that scenario than any other scenario possible. Imagine a libertarian president challenging Obama to repeal, or excuse me, challenging Democrats in Congress to repeal the Patriot Act, to abolish the Department of Homeland Security, to let's not bomb Iran, to get out of Afghanistan. Imagine a libertarian president challenging Republicans in Congress to get some starch. Imagine a libertarian president vetoing a Republican spending bill that spends too much. Get some starch. Let's save the country.
I agree with you, but I mean, you've gone over the numbers. We had Lew Rockwell on earlier talking about it. Even if they hyperinflate, we're going to go bankrupt, and government, it looks like, it's decided like a cancer to just eat everything, to totally take over. Don't the defense contractors, don't the welfare people, don't the unions, don't they all know that the course we're going on will wreck everything? Don't they get it? Don't they understand? Or is it just the special interests just don't care? They're in there snatching for whatever they can get right now.
Well, I think people do understand, and unless they have a clear choice, and I don't mean Obama and Romney, where Romney says, let's slash spending, but you just scratch the surface a little bit, and he wants to increase spending for defense. And I cringe every time I call the Department of War the Department of Defense. But we should increase spending for the Department of Defense, and we should hold Medicare harmless. Well, and for those listening, for everyone in this country, look, if we don't spend within our means, if we don't cut Medicare spending by 43%, we're going to find ourselves without a health care system at all. And that's what's at stake here. If we don't fix this, we're all going down together, all of us. And that would be mutual sacrifice on all of our parts. And I think really key to this, too, is mutual. This needs to be fair. And the country is anything but fair. It's up for sale. Both parties sell it. They've got their hands out. And corporations, individuals, groups, they're out to pay for it. And they do. And they get their special
Governor,
they get their special place in line in this country.
We're going to break here and come back with more points you've got to make. And because I've been asking the questions, I want to hear what's most important on your plate, but also take some calls. But think about this question when we come back first. Why are they announcing TSA checkpoints on the highways? Why are they ordering 450 million rounds of hollow point 40 cal? Why are they announcing armored pillboxes? Why is the head of the Army announcing they want to put armed troops stationed in every city and admitting that it's for domestic groups, not Al-Qaeda now? I mean, this is like a science fiction movie. And in Europe, they're announcing currency controls. They may not let you leave the country. I mean, this world is going into tyranny. It's really scary. We'll get your take on that. Look, the big mega corporations that are monopoly men, they want a giant dependent welfare class. They don't want a middle class. The system wants big government. You can have people that come out and say, oh, no, they want libertarianism. Yeah, there are some globalists who want to call it libertarianism and privatize things that are already public, but then just operate as government ripping you off. Don't confuse that Bilderberg, Peter Thiel type idea as real constitutionalism or what you call libertarianism. The ideas of drug decriminalization, the ideas of states' rights, the idea of not having a nanny state. I want to get the governor's take on the police state question I brought up with the proliferation of the military, the checkpoints, all of it here in a moment. Then your phone calls. I'll also ask me about the nanny state. California is moving into New York. city saying no soft drinks above 16 ounces, milk products will be banned, popcorn. I mean, we're actually saying this. I mean, I feel crazy when I say it. I feel like I'm lying. Even though it's in the news, my brain says that can't be true. Feels like I'm saying Martians landed in Central Park. I mean, it sounds crazy. 30,000 armed drones sounds crazy. The head of the Army saying, the Secretary of the Army 2 weeks ago, and the CFR saying, we're going to have armed troops in every city to take on the Americans. I mean, I'm ranting. We're going back to the governor here in a moment. I want to tell you about one of the ways we fund our operation, and that is selling products that I believe in. ProPure is the best gravity-fed filter side by side against all the other major competitors. You can check it out at InfoWarsShop.com or InfoWarsStore.com. We'll also get you there. We already had the lowest prices on the ProPure, but you can get an additional 10% off at checkout by entering the code WATER, W-A-T-E-R, if you're public school educated like I am. And then last but not least, I have found the best field filter that makes even, you know, scummy swamp water safe to drink. We have the lowest price on the Life Straw, and you get a free Citizen Rule Book and bumper stickers when you order it at Infowars.com. So ProPure, the lowest price at Infowars.com or InfoWarsShop.com, and Life Straw, the best field filter out there. An amazing technology. Life Straw, ProPure, both available at InfoWarsShop.com or by calling 888-253-3139. We also, because it's back in print, we sold these about a decade ago, but they went out of print. Now they've been reprinted, a new, bigger edition. It's a wider page, bigger font. Gary Allen, None Dare Call It Conspiracy. Very, very powerful book, available at Infowars.com, discounted as well, along with Tragedy and Hope that Ron Paul was talking about in the last hour, all at InfoWarsShop.com, and we are listener supported. Okay, going back to the governor. Governor, you heard my question, my diatribe about the accelerating, not even federalization, but militarization of everything, and shifting from it's for Al-Qaeda to it's for libertarian right-wing extremists. What do you make of this, and what would you do as president? What will you say in the debates about this issue?
Well, the root of all evil are politicians that want to get elected to save you and I from all of the what's bad in the world, whether that be drugs, whether that be the illegal immigrant, whether that be poor health care, whether that be the terrorist threat, and so we need to bomb Iran and we need to get in an endless war in Afghanistan. And so it's politicians at the root of all evil, creating with the executive, with the president, new agencies to address all these fears, and then the bureaucrats that run amok to go along with this. Look, I will tell you, as governor of New Mexico, my experience, good government was easy. It wasn't hard, and it started with looking at issues first and politics last. Don't discount electing a president of the United States beholden to no one, that goes in, and if no laws change, being able to control all these agencies, because the President of the United States appoints the heads of all these agencies, because the President of the United States appoints the heads of all and the membership of all boards and commissions, the President of the United States controls rules and regulations. The President of the United States controls exactly what it is that you are talking about right now, because these are all being driven through the various bureaucracies. That can come to an end, electing a president of the United States that's actually going to bring leadership as opposed to status quo and being bought and paid for.
Very well said. Now, again, getting back to Ron Paul here briefly, Ron Paul says let the states handle it with abortion and things, but then you get off into other issues that that are national sovereignty issues. You mentioned illegal aliens. Well, they use the illegals as an excuse to put in biometrics, but then don't even use it against them. Bank of America, wants 3 forms of ID for my crew members. We've been in there and shot video of it. One of my guys who had a bank account there. But an illegal can come in with a fake consular matricula. You can almost get out of Cracker Jack boxes. I understand immigrants are hardworking, many of them are. actually do help the economy. My issue is not with them. It's that the government, Republicans as well, give them welfare, get them on the system, teach them victimology and all of this liberation theology. I mean, when I was in high school at Anderson High, they were teaching us, you know, that America was evil and Mexico is going to take over. And this was white teachers doing this, by the way. I mean, this is what the government wants, is to kind of break things up, have us at each other's throats. And I understand you represented a border state there in New Mexico, but you can't have the illegals here, and you got to kick them out because of the welfare. I mean, you know, they come across the border, they have their kids, they immediately, I have to pay for it, and then the illegals end up becoming Democrats who vote 90% of the time to try to ban my guns. So that's why I have the problem with the illegal alien. So how do you deal with that as president?
Well, I think we make it as easy as possible for someone that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. I'm not talking about citizenship. I'm not talking about a green card. I'm talking about a work visa that would entail a background check, because we don't want criminals working in this country. With regard to the 11 million illegal immigrants that are here in this country right now, I think we need to set up a grace period where we can get them a work visa. And you're absolutely right about welfare. We do not want this to be about welfare. It needs to be about work. The third promise I'm making when it comes to the economy, besides submitting a balanced budget and vetoing expenditures that exceed revenue, is I am advocating throwing out the entire federal tax system, throwing out the income tax, throwing out corporate tax, withholdings, abolishing the IRS and replacing it with one federal consumption tax, in this case the fair tax. If we implement the fair tax, taxes will not be an issue, whether it's illegal immigrants, legal immigrants, U.S. citizens, visitors. No one is going to be able to
I understand I understand that would turbocharge the economy. Here's the problem that I was told by insiders 18 years ago and turned out to be very accurate, that they were going to always come out and have people push a fair tax or a flat tax, a sales tax, VAT, whatever the case is, and then bait and switch and call the income tax your Social Security at 10%, and then have basically 9999. You know, the real plan that he was pushing was 4 nines, and so then they can always jack the 9s up later, and it's just a way to get total federal surveillance of now all the sales happening at the point of sale. I mean, what is your fair tax plan?
Well, my fair tax plan is the fair tax. It's the consumption. So for those listening, watching, get online, fairtax.org. It does away with the 16th Amendment. No more income tax and no more withholdings from your payroll check. So, Alex, Social Security, Medicare, unemployment comes out of the proceeds of the fair tax.
No, I understand, but I mean, you're pledging that this would not happen unless we did get rid of the income tax.
That is part of the fair tax package, which 90 congressmen and women have signed on to this point. So the discussion or the template is there.
I know, but notice Neil Bortz even pushed that, but then as soon as it got down to the point, it was 999. And they left out the other 9. It just makes my head hurt to think.
Well, no, this 999 is something completely different.
No, I know it is, but I'm saying that's what they're going to end up pushing is, oh, we're not going to call it the income tax, but we're going to call it a Social Security tax.
Well, it wouldn't be a Social Security tax because the proceeds of Social Security come out of the proceeds of the fair tax. Now, you're right to criticize the finer points of all this, but to go to a one federal consumption tax is really a vast improvement over what we currently have. And imagine abolishment of the IRS and the ramifications that will have on the economy, that all of us don't end up spending months out of the year dealing with our taxes.
No, I hear you. Let's go to some phone calls. Former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson's our guest. He's the Libertarian presidential candidate 2012, GaryJohnson2012.com. Or you can do the big boy thing and support Mitt Romney or Obama. You can grow up, like one editorialist said, of people that wouldn't compromise. Folks, compromising has gotten us here. And if it was real compromise, I might be for compromise occasionally. But All we hear is compromise, compromise, like Gary was saying, work together. No, that means you give up ground to big government, regulations, nanny state. That was my last question. I promise we're going to calls, Governor. What is your take on the orgy of nanny state? Dogs have got to be in seatbelts or have or licenses for a paddleboard in Minnesota. Jesse Ventura's in Forbes talked about it 2 days ago here, Governor Ventura. We've got can't have popcorn, want to ban milk products in New York, banning soft drinks. I mean,
hopefully I'm speaking the obvious here. Bloomberg comes out, talks about sodas and the fact that they're unhealthy, drinking a soda over 16 ounces. Well, he's absolutely right. But he's going to make this government policy. Okay, so let's just look at this for a second. He makes this government policy. He makes it a law. You can't sell sodas over 16 ounces.
You just buy two 12-ounces.
You just buy two 12-ounces. But the point is, let's say he implements this. It's very, you know what, it brings about awareness. People actually do get healthier. They're able to measure this somehow. But that's Bloomberg. He puts it into play. But then his successor, because it actually is showing, and I don't think it would have anything to do with his law. It would just have to do with the awareness that went along with it. But then his successor comes along and criminalizes a 32-ounce container, criminalizes activities that otherwise wouldn't be criminal. You know, this buckling up the dog. The fine for not buckling up your dog is higher than the fine for not buckling up your child.
Exactly.
That's where it goes to. It isn't the initial thought. The initial thought is well intended, and it really does have a basis in better human behavior, healthier human behavior.
Yeah, but you can't have the government telling you what size drink you can have.
Exactly, because the ramifications of this is you end up criminalizing the 32-ounce container. And then you end up with a bureaucracy that's going to roam the streets to make sure that, oh, there's somebody with a really big cup. Is there water in the cup or is there Coke in the cup?
Absolutely, Governor.
Yeah.
No, it's going to give the police total excuses to get involved in our lives. It's a nightmare. Let's talk to, there's so many callers here. Let's talk to Keith in Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Governor Johnson. Go ahead.
How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Just real quick, I wanted to let you know how I woke up. I was laid off of my job in 2009, and I all of a sudden had all this time on my hands to do research and find things out. And it also led me to a hobby of mine, which turned into my career of playing poker online, and that's how I made my living. I'm sure you guys are aware of everything that's going on with that now. So I was just curious to know where Gary Johnson stands on, me being able to make a living with online poker.
Yeah, where are you on online? Where are you on online gaming, sir?
Well, I reached out to the poker players. This was well over a year ago, and said this is crazy. This should be a U.S. enterprise, and that the government bans it, and then so all poker players have to play poker online with offshore enterprises dictating it. Well, then the Justice Department cracks down on that. So what we've done is we've taken away 10 million Americans a passion for playing poker online, and we've taken that away. We're going to allow them to go into a casino, though, where they have to lose hundreds of dollars.
Well, that's what it's about. It's about going and doing rigged slot machines instead of having fun playing poker. And it's the same Justice Department caught shipping guns into Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. Thank you, caller. Governor, what's your...
and then here's another thing. Oh, all right, I'm a mountain biker. That's my passion. So I am riding my mountain bike on public trails that are now being subject to being closed to my mountain bike, but horses are allowed on those same trails. Horse excrement okay, but mountain bike tires not okay. That's the government, and this is online poker. Look, online poker. I should be able to play poker in this country, and I should be able to play poker in this country on a site that's owned by Americans, generating tens of thousands of jobs nationwide to accommodate the demand that goes along with online poker. But no, I can't do that, but I can go into a casino, and don't you know that the basis of all that legislation was the special interests, casino interests.
Of course, it's the real mafia not wanting you to be able to play poker with somebody. Amazing. Let's talk to Steve in Michigan on water fluoridation. Go ahead, Steve. Steve in Michigan, you're on the air with Gary Johnson. You have a water fluoridation question? I really wanted to hear that question. I can hear the guy breathing. We'll put him on hold. Kevin, Kevin, you're on the air with Governor Gary Johnson. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alex. I'm a former proud liberal Democrat who in '08 became a Ron Paul supporter. Big government was being used. I felt the money was never getting to where it was promised, and then I really responded to Ron Paul's answer to corruption. I've supported him in 12. I do not feel any anguish about the Rand Paul endorsement. He can do what he wants. I feel grateful that we have a libertarian candidate that's on the ballot in all 50 states. I'm hopeful that the other libertarians and constitutionalists join and can switch over en masse and support Johnson's campaign. It would be just as if Ron Paul did switch over and do the third party.
Yeah, we need to turbocharge that and really work to make sure he gets coverage. Thank you so much. Governor Johnson, comments on what he just said.
Oh, just right on. All I'm getting on today, all I'm asking is give me a look. Gary Johnson 2012, give me a look. See if anything that I have done suggests that I am anything about big government, if I am anything about taking away civil liberties. Arguably, I've done a better job of someone who's been in office of taking these interests on than anybody else, and that's what I'm putting myself out there as.
Well, you certainly did what you said you would do as governor, even though I disagree with you on a few issues. The fact that you do what you say you're going to do, I mean, that is such a rare political resource that I'm going to support you. I'm not going to support Mitt Romney. Final segment with Governor Gary Johnson here. Up at Infowars.com, here's some of the headlines. Tom Woods, the Ron Paul, don't endorse Mitt Romney, the video of that. Ron Paul 2012, should listen to Ron Paul 2008, that full video. Chuck Baldwin warns Ron Paul. U.S. congressmen demand justification for drone strikes. So is Rand Paul doing a good job there. Transhumanism agenda enforced with nano weapons. The nanny state is here. Life in occupied America with a Cade. Nigel Farage, member of the EU Parliament. The Euro Titanic has now hit an iceberg. And so much more at Infowars.com. Okay, Steve in Michigan, you were away from the phone, but I want to hear your fluoridation question. Go ahead for Gary Johnson. You're on the air with the governor.
Hey, Gary. First of all, I want to say I know you mean well, and you have an acute understanding of fiscal policy and the financial debacle we face as a nation. However, when you visited Michigan State University last year, you were hosted by the Young Americans for Liberty student organization, and I asked you a couple questions. One had to deal with fluoridation of municipal water supplies, to which you responded without hesitation, shrugging your shoulders, saying, well, my dentist says it's good, so it can't be that bad. And then also I asked you about Janet Napolitano's See Something, Say Something campaign, to which you kind of likened it to a neighborhood watch, and you said maybe it's not a bad thing. So I know you're not a bad guy, but I want to hear your rebuttal, maybe flesh it out what you meant.
Okay, thank you, caller. The issue of See Something, Say Something, let's take that first. Their point is, though, they want to get us all tattletaling on each other, and it creates this fear that terrorists are hiding under the table.
Well, look, if See Something, Say Something is reporting to the authorities that your parents are smoking pot and then your parents end up in jail, which is, we've seen instances of this all the time. No, that's not a good thing. So, Steve, I really always want to be honest and forthright, and the See Something, Say Something in terms of no TSA, in terms of no Homeland Security, and gee, if you really do see something that you should report it.
Exactly. I mean, if I see somebody doing something illegal, I will call the police or do something myself. You're for getting rid of Homeland Security. I mean, that answers, you said that before he came on.
Well, so my point is that this is the kind of thing, without government, this is the kind of a thing that we can rely on. Fluoridation. Look, I don't want to make it a federal government program to fluoridate the water, but if your city's fluoridating the water and it's something that you're absolutely opposed to, then that's where that issue should reside, not certainly with the federal government.
Sure, I think those are good answers, and we can further educate you on those things. Real fast, let's talk to Dan in New Mexico. Last caller we have time for. Sorry to the other callers. Dan, go ahead.
Hello, Governor Johnson. Calling from Albuquerque here, and we definitely support you. Definitely, no doubt about it. Here in Vantana Ranch, I got my sign up. A couple things. First is I'd like you to address how you would get homeschoolers better supported.
We only got about a minute and a half. Okay, homeschoolers. What else?
And number two is that I do think that you can win. I think it's a money issue. I'd like to help with that. I'd like to call the Utah office. Can you give me a name to talk to?
Get online, GaryJohnson2012.com. Talk to Grant. And,
okay, thank you. We got to jump, but folks, even if the point of supporting is to get the word out. Bottom line, you only lose by not trying. Governor, real quick, what's your view on homeschooling and the assaults on that?
Well, I'm an absolute supporter of homeschooling, so when it comes to the federal government and what should the federal government do regarding education, abolish the Federal Department of Education. Give all this back to the states, 50 laboratories of innovation and best practice, and that's exactly what we'll have. But get the federal government out of education. Established in 1978, look at educational performance from 1978.
It's gone straight down. Governor?
Nothing to suggest value added.
Absolutely. Candidate for president. Thank you so much, Gary Johnson. Big show tonight on TV, 7 o'clock. PrisonPlanet.tv.